First item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Let's
I see Howard raising his hand.
Howard. Yeah.
Howard, Howard, you'll have to unmute if you have public comment. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I got just minor real quick public comment. Ready for it?
Absolutely.
Okay, with the budget committee, I'd love to hear you guys start being able to budget some of our tourism dollars to our parks for brochures, to promote our parks department and everything else. As a member of the parks board, I guess I'm not officially, I can't say that was official, but it's Friends of Nob Hill Nature Park and just being involved with the parks. I see so many people from out of town coming to our community to enjoy our parks. It'd be great if we could start getting some type of maps, brochures, so that we could capitalize on that as a tourism thing. You know, so I don't know if that's within your parameters, but I thought I'd put it out there if you're the budget committee. And that's it.
Oh, Howard, thank you very much. Do we have any other comments? Any other public comments?
Just a FYI for Howard's knowledge and everybody else that may be new on the committee here, we do have parks and trails brochures printed. We printed about 100 or so a couple years ago, a year or so ago, when we redid the parks map and plan. We had an organization from Portland State University that redid the maps. Those have remained in City Hall and kind of dormant. The map is available on our website, and that was all paid for from part of the investment that the budget committee approved a couple years ago into parks.
I'll have to stop
My
by and get
understanding
some.
is you also have a parks master plan as well.
Yes, that is available online as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment? Do you have time for additional public comment? One more time. Do we have any public comment?
I don't see any, Bill.
Okay, therefore, then, Matt, I'm going to turn this over to you and you can get started with the general fund.
All right, thank you very much. Give me a second to share my screen here. So you all have some information in front of you, hopefully, with packets, and we can kind of jump right in. First thing I wanted to show you was the general fund 5-year forecast. I show about 5 years of actual history, where I expect we will be at the end of the year. And with the proposed budget that is in front of you tonight, what that looks like. Green is revenue, red are expenses. The purple bars are the ending fund balance that we have every year. And then this yellow line is the reserve policy that's in our financials of a 20% reserve policy. And on the bottom of the graph, you'll see what percentage we are actually at. So you can see in the year's history, we actually end up at 33%, 33, 25, 29. I'm expecting to be around 28% this year. So this goes back to what John and I have done over the last 4 or 5 years in budgeting revenues very conservative, budgeting expenses high, and ending up very well at the end of the year, as you can see in the history. The forecasted years show, take the proposed budget and then kind of just forecast out the revenue and expenses based on any kind of economic trends or salaries and benefit estimates that we have. Are there any questions on the general fund forecast? I'm trying not to go too into the weeds, although I could talk about this stuff for hours. Okay. So next slide is about general fund revenue. This is just a snapshot of the summary page that's in your packet, showing the proposed revenues that are coming into the city, estimating a 2.5 beginning fund balance, and then all of the revenues summarized above. In your packet, you should have a breakdown of what those revenues are, like property taxes, estimated at 2.2 million. That is 2.1 million of current property taxes, and then $45,000 of previous year property taxes that come in. I'm happy to go through in more detail of the summary. Some budget committees and council members like to do it. Others don't. So I'm open to any kind of suggestions or questions that the city council may have or any budget committee may have. Don't be afraid to unmute yourself if you, okay, this is gonna be a quick meeting if we keep going. Not that I'm complaining though. I did want to show this graph real quickly because I know we are going to have some discussions later on regarding departments. And this graph is kind of representing what revenue is brought in by department, as well as the expenses of each department. We get a lot of questions of why is a department in a general fund versus why is it not in its own fund operating on its own. In a very simplistic explanation, usually departments are in a general fund when they cannot support themselves financially. So for example, court and police combined together, the cost in the proposed budget is $4.7 million for those materials and services and personnel for municipal court and police. Obviously, they don't bring in enough revenue to cover themselves. This is mainly the court revenue, which is estimated about $402,000 this year. And so we put them in the general fund to share some of this general use money among all the departments. So if we take $1 away from one department and give it to another, that's kind of how we have to play the yo-yo game of if we give $100,000 to this department, I have to ask the question of where are we going to take that money from? So it's kind of a balancing act, department by department. And I think John and I and the rest of the department managers do our best to kind of use our resources as best we can. Are there any questions?
Matt, this is Doug Morton. And
Yes.
can I ask to go back to the other slide by the time I got unmuted? Okay. I was going, okay. On. I've got it. Thank you. I don't
Okay.
have a question. I just wanted to look at it.
Yeah, not a
Thank
problem.
you.
Any questions on any of this slide right here that kind of breaks down the actual revenue for each department?
Yes, Patrick here. And I should remember this from my days on the committee. So the unappropriated funds are funds that we have not designated for particular use, but because we're approving the budget, they are available for us to spend without having to come back and approve those expenditures?
That would
Or
be,
how does that work? Yeah.
yeah. So unappropriated funds are funds that are set aside that cannot be touched unless there is a declaration of emergency to use
Okay,
those.
the emergency. Okay.
What you're probably
That is-
referring to is the contingency funds.
See,
And those are funds that we don't allocate them in a specific category, but they are relatively available for us to do a budget adjustment and move those into its certain line item.
okay.
Matt,
Thank
can
you.
you explain what constitutes an emergency?
Anything that you as a council would declare a public emergency. So
Okay,
the pandemic
you.
is a good example, but anything that is declared by the city council.
thank you.
Matt, could you give me an idea of what types of things are in the general use revenue?
Yeah.
It could just be a couple of things. I was just curious.
Yeah, so it's definitely property taxes. So that 2.2 million, the intergovernmental revenue, most of that is all general use. There is in the intergovernmental revenue, there is that $145,000 that is shown. That is actually a revenue item that we received from the school district for 2 SRO officers. They pay a portion of their salary and benefits,
Oh, that's right.
50% of their salary and benefits. So that is 50% of 2 officers for the SRO position. So that would be dedicated to police specifically, but other than that, the general fund support services is another big one. That is all the charges that we do to water, sewer, and storm. That is considered general use, as well as franchise fees. So all of the charges for services other than the recreation revenue, that would be included. That $120,000 that is listed in the proposed budget, that $120,000 would make up the $125,000 that is shown right here for the recreation revenue.
Okay.
License permits and fees, a lot of those go into the building and planning. There are some park rental fees of $2,000 that obviously would go into parks. Fines for court, $210,000. That is included in the police and court up here. And then the miscellaneous revenue is typically the interest from the money that we keep in the bank. That is general use. The miscellaneous that is general is obviously for general use. Is that a pretty good kind of just basic rundown?
Yes, thanks, Matt.
Hey, Matt, well, hopefully maybe last question around revenue. And maybe my brain is just on it with now our county back in higher risk level for COVID, but we are not seeing, of course, actual numbers for our current fiscal year for revenue. And I'm wondering if of the revenue sources that you talk about, what are the trends for perhaps less revenue, as we see 2018-19 year, 19-20 year, 20-21 year, and then 21-22 year, we're seeing this increase of projected revenue. And I'm wondering if any of the revenue sources might be impacted by continuing impacts of COVID.
Yeah, I can give you a brief rundown of a few items. So property tax estimates I actually get from the county. There's a number of different finance directors who used a number of formulas to track how much the county says versus how much they actually receive. And I keep my own spreadsheet that tracks that. But we've been pretty consistent over the last few years of whatever the county thinks we're going to get. We're usually pretty close, if not a little bit over that. So to be conservative, I just usually budget whatever they say we're going to get. For most of the intergovernmental revenue, so the cigarette, alcohol revenue, the cannabis tax, all that stuff, that actually comes as estimates from the League of Oregon Cities and is based on population. Let's see. Franchise fees are the franchise fees that we charge to water, sewer, and storm. They are similar to what like Comcast pays to operate a utility within our city. So we charge the enterprise funds, what those are. And if revenue comes in as expected, it's just based on 10% of revenue. So if we get a lot of revenue in, then that's how much we get in the franchise fees. Recreation revenue, that is based on what we believe we will be able to bring in as 6 months of the $2 fee is in place. That has a sunset date of December 2021. So that recreation revenue is included in that $2 fee that may go away or is scheduled to go away. And building permits, we're in a very promising growth period, obviously, right now, and we've seen, over 500% of an increase in our building permits. So that translates to additional revenue, which, based on the projects we have right now, that's why I anticipate some of the higher numbers that you're seeing in some areas. Business licenses actually goes down. That is because I anticipate some revenue loss from the changes that were made with the municipal code. And I think that covers pretty much everything. Library is estimated at a proposed $0 for fines. That is in an anticipation of a policy shift for our library department. And that will be a discussion for a city council at a later date to potentially not place fees on late library books. So I'm anticipating that the city council will move forward with that. So I'm not anticipating any revenue in that line item.
Under charges for services,
Yes,
What's the story with dockside services?
dockside services. Yep. So the reason you see that going away or going to zero is because that was actually this upcoming year is going to move to the Public Works internal fund. So if you go to the Public Works internal fund from the last meeting, you will see that line item of dock services. The reason it has been moved there is because Public Works is the one that is actually, really having to go out and maintain and do maintenance on that. It's not really the parks staff that is going out and doing that. And so the revenue and expenses from that, and you'll see that when we get to the parks budget, you'll see the expense side is actually moved over to the Public Works Operations Fund as well.
Okay,
So we're just kind of moving the cup from one fund to another because it's more appropriate, because it's Public Works that's actually doing the work.
Okay, Matt, Patrick again here.
Yeah.
So under that same line, the dockside services, the recreation utility fee, is that where we've been accounting for the $2 fee?
Yes, in past
Okay.
years, it was broken out into that recreation utility fee line item. Since the next year, we're kind of combining it, and it potentially, it's scheduled to go away in December.
Right,
It's included in that recreation revenue line item above.
Sorry, yeah, sorry if I know you're
No, you're fine.
responding to
We're-
some of this, and I'm still a little, okay.
We're always trying to kind of best be as transparent as we can and simple as we can, and try and make this document as easy to understand as we can.
And you need to do that for me. So thank you for that. And then again, I apologize. I was momentarily distracted when some of this was asked. So under the SDC admin fees,
Yes.
previous 2 years, nothing, and now 120,000 anticipated. That was also, how's that set?
So in previous years, the city had not taken the administration charge from system development charges. It is a percentage of the SDCs, and every SDC has an admin portion, a reinvestment portion, and then an improvement portion. And so in the past, we have not taken that administration portion. So I'm actually going to start taking that for the general fund.
Okay. And one last on the interest earnings.
Yep.
Going down 50,000. Does that just reflect the amount of money that we have sitting collecting interest, and we have spent that down?
No, it actually is reflecting the state pool account and the interest that is received. So as the market has been fluctuating, the pool account has actually lowered their interest rate for customers, and their customers are all of the cities and state organizations that keep money in the state government pool. And so over the last probably 6 to 9 months or so, we've been seeing a decrease in that rate as far as a notification of. It used to be 3-4%, which was really great, and that's why you see those really big years. And it's just kind of slowly, it seems like almost every quarter it seems to go down like 1/4%, as they kind of adjust for what they're seeing in the market. So right now we're not, I think it's about 0.75 or 1. It's pretty low right now for the state pool account.
Matt, what line item would I see revenue from Sand Island? I don't know what that contract is, so I don't even know what kind of amount or figure to look for, but where is that captured?
Gotcha. So that is going to be under, let's see. Let's see. I think for right now, that is going under miscellaneous general. And the reason for that is some of the, we don't see a very, because it's just started, we don't see a very consistent amount for how much is going to be brought in. And so we don't budget a whole lot of revenue for that because it's a very cyclical and not a very big line item. So kind of what we're anticipating is if we don't budget any for it, when it comes in, it's kind of a nice little bonus. This goes back to what we've done over the past few years of being very conservative in our revenue expectations. And so we don't put a lot in the budget for those type of cyclical kind of events. And so it's not a very big line item that we didn't put into the budget.
For transparency's sake, can you give us a ballpark of this past season? I mean, are we talking 10,000, 20,000, like super ballpark?
Yeah, John, do you recall what the last check we got was? I'm trying to recall how much it was.
Let me unmute myself there. So yeah, the Sand Island revenue comes in two components. One is the city gets 10%. First of all, Sand Island used to be entirely expense, 100%. So any revenue to offset that expense and our employees aren't over there doing things is a good thing in my mind. So we are getting 10% of their gross camping receipts over there. And we also get 10% of our local hotel. It qualifies for the hotel tax. So we're getting roughly 20%. And it's around 10,000, I think, last year. So, which, it's a net positive. So. And we're not maintaining the restrooms and mowing the grass and policing the docks and all of that. So,
Doug Morton, can I weigh in?
Absolutely, Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the savings that we are saving by not having our public works crews continually go over there, cut the trees, the danger trees, all of those things and the mowing of it and the cleaning up of it, and all of those things have been taken over by through the lease agreement, and that is a tremendous savings in its own. Plus, it doesn't put our workers are able to focus on other things. It seems to me like in the summer, we took our barge over, and it took 2 days to clean to do the maintenance on the island for 2 people. And as we well know, we only have a few people in our parks maintenance program the way it is. So that helped alleviate a lot of time spent. And that's hard. That's really a tough one to measure about financial budgeting of what it has saved the city and how much efficiency has been is effective in terms of monetary gain. Liability is also shifted from being on the barge and going over and back and forth and that kind of thing. I just wanted to, for new budget members, I just wanted to bring that to the surface.
Could you remind me who we're leasing that to? Leasing Sand Island to?
To Brad Hendrickson. He is the owner and manager of the St. Helens Marina, and he can keep a very close eye on Sand Island with his binoculars at hand and with his assistants, with the assistant people that he has working for him. It's just to me, it's so very effective, and I appreciate that so much from what he's doing. Yeah, there are some minor problems, parking, that kind of thing, but the outcome very much outweighs what was there before and how we were trying to deal with issues on Sand Island.
Okay, one more follow-up question. So they were talking earlier, we had a meeting where they were talking about building cabins, and that was coming out of the revenue that they have been collecting. Is that how that was?
Correct. So
I just want to make
John
sure I'm
can,
following it correctly.
yeah, John can and Matt can tell you exactly what the split is on what the percentage on our lease agreement, the percentage of revenues that Mr. Hendrickson takes to run that operation and to invest into that operation opposed to what we take. I think it's somewhere around 20% or 15%. So John and either John or Matt can tell you exactly what that is.
Yeah, the improvements that they plan to make, I'm not sure how deep you want to go with this, but it's all on, the cost is all on them, and whatever they rent those rooms for or rent the cabins for, we get that much more percentage on our income as well. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, so unless anybody has any questions, we'll kind of go into the department's budgets, so to speak. You should have all the information to you in your packet in front of you. I have put every department on here just as their summary information for personnel and materials. And then, like I said, in your packet is the more detailed information. And I'm happy to open it up to any questions that Budget Committee or City Council may have. We do have several department managers that are here and on tonight to help answer any questions that you may have. So feel free to go ahead and shout out any questions.
I'm Matt.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it might be good if maybe you kind of like do a like, say anything about administration, and if nobody, move
Yeah,
on.
go department by
So
department.
that kind of help control.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's fine. Let's go ahead and start with administration. So a couple of things you'll notice in all of the personnel services is PERS increases. PERS increase every 2 years, and that is this is one of those years where PERS rates increase. So that's one of the reasons why you see an increase in the PERS amounts.
Okay. Oh, Matt, sorry.
Yeah.
I think maybe, okay. I think maybe you misunderstood. I wasn't expecting you to give a rundown on each. I was just thinking, say, maybe ask, does anybody have
Right.
any question about administration? Then, anybody about city recorder, just so
Yeah.
that.
I was, you're one step ahead of me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over just a basic, just as you go through every department, just a few basic things that you may or may not see. So,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Yep. So you'll see. So other than the PERS, you'll see usually when we see regular wages increases, that means there's additional staffing there. And so is there any questions specifically about administration?
Yeah, Mark Gunderson, I have a question.
Yes.
Just real quick, and this might be, this has already been covered, you're going to cover it. What is the PERS increase every 2 years then?
Oh,
Is it a percentage or is it?
it is a percentage of whatever the PERS board decides. We are kind of at the mercy of the PERS boards and the evaluators for the PERS liabilities rates of that. I can find those rates here. You'll have to allow me just a second to find those increases.
But that's nothing the city controls. That's
Correct. That is
Yeah,
nothing.
you
that
don't
the
need to look at
city controls. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We are at the mercy of the PERS boards and the Oregon legislature for whatever
Okay.
rules they decide to make.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep. So any questions about administration?
I have a question, Matt. Before we used to have the equivalent, full-time employee equivalents on these, but we don't anymore. So the question I have is the increase in wages last year, 26%, and the proposed for this year, this current year is 23%. Is that because we've hired in higher quality, but higher educated or people, or is it we hired more people? What is the reason for that?
Yep. So in part of your packet, you should see a personnel requirements summary sheet. And in that sheet, you'll see that the administration is going from 3 FTE to 4 FTE. And then there's an explanation near the bottom of the page that 0.5 of that is a proposed position for a part-time communication staff. That person is currently as a regular part-time temp person through June 30th. We are proposing to keep that FTE as a 0.5 FTE for part-time communication. So that is an employee that currently works at the library as well as came in while our communications officer was out on family medical leave. And so that person stepped in to help out and really did a great job. And we'd like to continue. We've seen some of the fruits of that labor of that person working. And so we'd like to continue that position. It also includes a 0.4 or a 0.5 increase. That is a typo I see on the personnel changes. It should say 0.5 FTE for a part-time Main Street coordinator. And that was part of the agreement that the city council agreed with Main Street with the organization known as Shedco that we are reorganizing under the city's umbrella to continue the Main Street program. And so part of the agreement was a part-time staff person.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that that information is in the packet. What part of the packet?
Did you pick up the packet of information from City Hall?
Yes, I did.
Okay, on the left, on one of the, you should have a packet. There's kind of 3 general packets. One packet full of general information that included the budget message, and you should have a personnel summary. Yeah, it includes the strategic plan and just kind of some basic information. And then the other packets were like meeting 1 and meeting 2. And I can put the personnel summary here on the screen. So
Okay, so that personnel summary is in the budget message.
It is talked about in the budget message. So the changes in personnel are discussed in the budget message, but you should see a document that looks like this on your screen, and it should say personnel requirements summary. And that should be in the packet of general information.
Oh, okay.
But it goes all the way back to 2012, 2013 staffing levels and kind of shows you the progression of things.
Okay, somehow I missed that one. So I'll probably ask you some questions on this, other things on that.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Any other questions on administration? All right, moving forward. Oh, Zach, sorry.
So actually, this is one that'll go probably cover the others. So I was looking at the professional services.
Yes.
So it looks like in a number of departments, there's increase and a number of departments decrease. So what's the motor for those changes, and does overall are the funds kind of the same when you balance out where there's increases and where there's decreases?
We try to do as best as we can to balance out the expenses.
Sure.
And many times where you see professional service increasing, that is because of attorney fees.
Say no more. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
On that same note, I recall that there was some overtime changes that were not happening in other departments, but looks like quite a bit for administrative.
Oh, yes. So the overtime charges, we have one person in the AFSCME union that is currently our communications officer. She works a lot and works a lot of odd hours. And so she accrues comp time as well as overtime to the extent that we try and get her to take a vacation, but then something happens in the city and she has to come in. This is part of the reason of why we're trying to bring in some additional assistance for that position. But the $10,000 is kind of a flat line that we've tried to budget every year, just so that we can make sure that she's not getting to the cap on comp time, so that we can pay her out for that or pay her overtime.
and this isn't specific to administration, and I remember making this comment last year, but I would love to put the bug in the ears for the new city council members. But on these pages, there are some performance measures listed for each department, and a lot of those performance measures seem not to align really with the city's strategic plan. And I would just ask maybe for just consideration in the future, thinking about how performance measures connect to the strategic plan. So really when all of these decisions are being made, it's done in a cohesive way. So looking at things, especially not as much in administration, but as we move forward, some of the performance measures, around, the number, I saw one like the average length of city work sessions, is that really evaluating correctly if our city is doing a high quality job? Is that a high quality success measurement? So just something maybe for council to think about in moving forward of how departments are being measured their success.
That's a great suggestion, Claire. And I will tell you, I'm already ahead of you. The GFOA, General Finance Officers Association, which does a budget award every single year for those cities that obtain it. Myself, as finance director of the city, I've received it every year. Part of those revisions, and they change every year to update to current practices. One of the changes that are upcoming in the next year is to align all of the performance measures with goals in the city. So the GFOA is already on you, and it's already on my bucket list to start working into next year. We didn't do them anytime this year just because of the time constraints that we had. But that is definitely something that will be brought up for department managers to look at over this course of the year. Great suggestion. Okay, any questions with city recorder department? Any questions about city council department? Any questions about?
City council.
Yeah.
Professional services has gone from non-existent to 50,000 proposed.
Yep.
Is that anticipation of what?
That is in anticipation of continuing having an attorney. You don't see it in the proposed budget this year. It's because it's zero. But in the year end, you will see expenses in that line item for the city council, because we have an attorney present at every meeting now. That gets to be expensive considering the number of meetings that we have, in addition to the potential attorney fees in the near future with city council items going on right now.
Okay.
Any questions about municipal court? Not seeing any. Any questions about police?
Yeah, what happened to FY 19 and 20 on this chart?
Are you looking at the police department?
Yes.
For the performance measures.
Performance measurements.
Oh, performance measurements. Oh, they have not been filled in yet. I know Chief Greenway did have his staff give me that information. I apologize, it did not get in there.
Okay.
That would be my fault, so I apologize. That will be updated for the approved and adopted. The city council will see that in there as the full document. I will make sure that is in there. I apologize. Chief Greenway did give me that information and it did not get in there.
But they're still doing something.
Yes. We still have a police department. They are still chugging along. It's, of course, an interesting time. So any questions for Chief Greenway and the police department?
I see $20,000 for tactical proposed for 21-22. Is there something to be updated, technology to be updated, new new stuff?
I think Chief Greenway would be happy to answer that. I see he's unmuted himself.
Right. We just, Claire, we just combined, I guess, pools of, what last year's it's, it had firearms, and we would take taser. We have to replace our tasers. We have to replace batteries. This is all tactical equipment, ammunition, defensive tactics training. So we just made one pool for that ever changing and ever evolving tactical equipment. Again, this is all with the vision of keeping our residents safe, keeping our officers safe, and de-escalating every chance we can. So there's no whiz bang new tools out there. We're very conservative on this, but in lieu of having separate accounts for like firearms or ammunition, defensive tactics, we just named it tactical and combined it. And again, we have increased our training as our nation has asked us to do, and that takes some funding to be able to have training tools and training items to do. So that's all that increase is just combining other columns.
Matt, what I'm hearing Chief Greenway say is these kinds of purchases would have been made every fiscal year, but in 18, 19, 19, 20, can you share which line item or line items, if it's kind of split between many, that would have been captured in?
It would have been operating supplies.
Okay, thank you.
So I notice a huge dip in certification and incentive. And it just, I know we've had some programs to, so anyway, wow, what our incentive programs not working? Are we giving them up? What's
correct? Not a huge dip. It's actually being combined into regular wages because they are paid. That certification in incentive pay is paid every month on their monthly paycheck. So instead of breaking it out and having another line item, we've tried to simplify, and so it's combined into the regular wage line item.
So you're saying that the wage increases for this proposed budget includes the certification incentive payments previously done?
Yes.
So that really knocks down the wage increases.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, we always do budget in our police department specifically. We always seem to have a number of openings. It's just how the world works. We hire 2 new officers and one retires or one loses away. And I know the current police department is down a few officers right now. We have in the budget, we have fully budgeted full staffing capabilities. Whether the department can actually get there is another question. So just
how many full-time employees would that number be?
Chief,
We're fully staffed. It's 23 if we're fully staffed.
For the police?
23 fully
Okay.
staffed. That'll be 20 sworn officers and 3 civilian support staff.
Okay.
So we're down 2 sworn officer positions. We have vacancies.
I have one more question on we talked a couple of years ago about body cameras. Where do we stand on that now?
We have body cameras, and we have a very robust body worn camera program, and we use them every day.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Chief, could you speak to the wages and the competitive wages around our area?
So for everybody to understand is that the police department, we struggle to fill, like Matt had said, fill our ranks fully. Just to kind of put a little story to this, John Eggers has been with our agency for over 22 years. And in that 22 years, he said there was a 6-month period that the St. Helens Police Department was fully staffed with all the people. It's ebb and flow, and we just can't get there. One of the challenges for the St. Helens Police Department is we compete with metropolitan departments for the wages. And for example, the Hillsborough Police Department starts their officers $13,000 more a year on their first day. If it's a lateral officer they're hiring, it's $20,000 more than what we pay them. So we lose a lot of potential applicants and officers to the metropolitan areas. I understand they're a bigger agency, they have more money. It's just how our geographic location in comparison to those locations, and we struggle. So that does hinder us. We are actually having a meeting tomorrow, not to digress in this conversation, but we're having a meeting tomorrow to talk about succession planning, because the St. Helens Police Department in 3 years is going to have over 100 years experience walking out the door with retirements. And we struggle to fill 2 spots right now. So you can imagine what it's going to be in 3 years when you lose 5, very seasoned veteran officers that make our community as safe as it is today. So we have to start having those difficult conversations of what does the city want to do as far as wages for their officers. We have some good incentive programs right now that we are working, but it's just not going to get us to the point that we need to be. And please keep in mind that the St. Helens Police Department is the only department that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And folks, I will tell you that is a necessity, because at 2 and 3 in the morning, our officers are responding to a plethora of calls, to include violent calls. And those seconds and minutes are needed to have those officers working. So again, it's not doom and gloom. We'll work on some solutions. We're very good as a community and as a city staff to come up with these. So hopefully, Councilor Tilton, that answers those questions.
Okay.
Having worked with the St. Helens Sheriff's Office, actually the County Sheriff Office, I saw that same problem, and I don't know how you actually do it with the difference in pay from Multnomah and Hillsborough and all the other counties close to us. It truly amazes me you have employees.
Yes, sir.
How much money would it take to pay at the rates you're talking? I mean, how much more will our city have to find in our budget to pay competitively all of our officers? 20,000 times 20? Is that what I'm hearing? A year?
Yes. Roughly.
I don't know how you do it, but I think it really needs to be done.
Well, I won't argue with that. I agree. But again, I'm just the leader of some great employees that make my job easy. So
Garrett, I wasn't sure if what you were saying about it has to be done. I think if you're saying that, our police officers, are doing their job, that needs to be done, it needs to be done. Or if you were also saying, or you were saying we need to find 400,000 in the budget.
I think for the future that you can't be so much lower than surrounding counties. I know the sheriff's department was losing training, the county paying for the training, and they're there for a year and then they go somewhere else because they're going to make 10,000 more.
Chief Greenway.
yes, sir.
Counselor Morton, and I have a question about balancing the number of officers you have with the budget. In other words, if you came down to 18 officers, then there would be obviously more pay to go around. How do you do that? I mean, could that be something that we hear in the future about the budget and about this concern? Can you afford to diminish the size of the squad that you have or the department that you have in order to create a pay raise?
No, unfortunately, we can't. We don't have enough staffing now as it is to be proactive. And what I say with all the law changes and the progression of police reform, that is tasking us with more training, more certification. And what that ultimately does is take those officers off their regular duties of patrolling and responding to 911 calls and puts them in a training environment. And then we have to have the days off, the vacation, the court schedules, So there's a lot of variables in staffing a police department, unlike any other department, in a city, because of, I kind of equate it to flying an airplane. There's a lot of buttons, and if you push a button, something's going to happen. And so for us to say we'll reduce our staffing to get those wages, that wouldn't really help us at all, because we would actually be shooting ourselves in the foot, no pun intended, because we wouldn't have the staffing, because we can pay our cops 20 grand more a year, but those same cops have to get the same training, same certification, same courts. It's just how it is. Now, I would recommend that we do spend some money for a independent staffing study, that consultants out there can come in and they can look at our calls for service, our officers' time that they are spent assigned on a call, officers' time they're spent free, the time they spent, doing proactive policing. And that would give the city council and leadership and budget committee a better picture of where our staffing study should be. It really has always been, anecdotal that we should have 27, 28, but I've yet to see anything in writing from an independent, non-biased company to come in and look at our city size, the calls for service, and then tell us what we need based upon that. It used to historically be across the United States that for every 1,000 residents, you needed one officer. And that's kind of gone to the wayside. It's been debunked for what it's worth. So we really don't have a clear picture of how many officers we need. I will tell you this, that we're barely holding on, and that the officers are extremely busy going call to call to call. Our investigations are ramping up with complex sex crimes against children that take 2 detectives. So it's as much as we're just starting to grow, and our crime is starting to increase steadily. And, so it's just conversations we should start having now to prepare for the future, so we don't get caught off guard a couple years down the road.
Thank you for going on record for that explanation. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Hey,
sir.
Chief, how much would that cost? How much would it cost for an independent study?
I don't know, Mr. Mayor. I think, I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know. It would be a staffing study. There's corporations out there that will come in and look and kind of give you, but I can research that and get back with you, sir.
Better do it quick.
I wanna look into
the budget.
Yes.
Okay, I'll talk with Matt tomorrow and get that ball rolling.
And just so everybody knows, that clear back when, we had that guy shooting up our town, Veach, and we had cut right out on injury. We had the 2 officers that were involved in that had to go on administrative leave. We had people on maternity leave. Our guys were spread so thin and working so much overtime. They were just running ragged. And you recall that, Chief Greenway. And
Yes, sir.
so to talk about maybe downsizing 1 or 2 officers is no good. I just wanted to throw that out there.
So, yeah, with regards to officer pay, I think with our last contract negotiations, we were not shooting for the middle in that negotiation. We were trying to get ahead of the curve. And we offered a pretty favorable contract above, at least
Yes.
above market. So
Yep.
may not be nearly enough, but it was, we recognize that that's an issue, and we were trying to get ahead of it.
So my suggestion, recommendation is that we get a staffing study first to see where we should be at. And a company could come in and say, we need 10 more officers, but if we can't fill those spots, it really does us, no good. And hence why, and I didn't ask for more staffing this year in this budget, because I know that we struggle in filling the openings we have now. So, that's just, we're kind of, it's a catch-22.
I would personally like to know, because, and I'm just going to speak a little bit outside of, for what we offer our citizens versus what they pay the county to get what they get from the county, because we are they're being double dipped. I'd like to know how many officers it takes just to service St. Helens, almost 14,000. And I don't know, what are we, 6 mile? I don't know. Is it 6 square mile?
5.5.
5.5. So yeah, I want to know, just kind of see what that is. Cause I'll tell you what, from what I've researched on county services, we are getting, somebody needs to step up and talk to those county commissioners. I'm just telling you that right now. As mayor, and if any citizens are watching this, you should really look into it. Your jaw will drop. That's all I got on
Part
that
of
subject.
Part of the potential staffing survey could also incorporate avenues to look at for funding additional positions from a consultant side and point of view. At somebody from the outside, and obviously we're not the only ones with this problem, so I'm sure there are solutions out there, and having a professional consultant give their opinion on that would be valuable.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
we have what you would probably describe as a super lousy police station. How much inefficiency does that add to our personnel? Because we're really hurting. It would look like that another reason for having a better police station is to have our personnel be a lot more efficient in what they've got to do. Or is that totally disconnected?
No, you're correct, Counselor Topaz. It does affect our daily operations. I can tell you, the small things add up to the big things, and we're working a trailer with 5 individuals. It's hard to, we have to step out to have conversations. We take time out of the day to walk to a restroom through the elements, to even wash our hands with this COVID pandemic. We're really behind the curve on that. Inside the station's the same, but we're working towards a solution on that with this new public safety facility. So that will shore up a lot of the areas and really increase our efficiency, but most of all, be able to increase the service to our residents who deserve better.
Any other questions for the police department? Okay, we'll move forward to library. Any questions for Margaret? Hearing none. Any questions for myself as finance department?
Can you print money?
If I did, I wouldn't be working.
That was a good answer, Matt.
Everybody has those days. Any questions for the finance department? Okay. I know we do have Parks and Recreation, and I know Councilor Chilton does have questions, and I'm sure a couple budget committee members, because we have some staff here that are from building and planning. I just wanted to quickly go over them first, just so they could leave if they would like, because I think the Parks and Rec discussion might be a little bit longer than what is typically. So if that's okay, I'd like to just skip forward real quickly if there's any questions on the planning department. Any questions on the building department?
What are bank service fees for the building department?
Yes, that is new for this current year and this upcoming year. The building department recently switched to an online state building permit software system. And within that software, it is exclusively just for building permits. And in that service, they actually can charge credit cards over the web and through this software program. So the bank service fees are the charges that are actually the processing fees for those credit cards. And we have experienced this past year quite a lot of development. So there's a lot of charges. We expect that development to continue into next year. So that's why you see such a decent amount budgeted there for that. Somebody can pay their $20,000 building permit with American Express, and we get to pay the processing fees for that.
What are the processing fees typically?
It's typically anywhere from 1% to 3%. Sometimes I'm not sure if we allow Discover on the system. That's a question for the state software program, but usually Discover charges a higher percentage. And so some places don't accept Discover for that reason. But typically 1% to 3%. Okay, so we'll jump back to Parks and Recreation. They are still separated in departments. As many people may realize, we did combine organizationally the departments into one as Parks and Recreation. We do have Shauna, the Parks and Recreation manager here, as well as Mohammed, who's the Public Works Director, which Parks and Recreation falls under now. But for the budget sakes, we did want to keep them separate just because they can be two very different programs. So any questions for Parks and Recreation?
I'll start with an easy one, Matt, and that's my eyes can't follow the personnel summary. So going back to that page 7 in our first budget, I see previously they were broken out. So I see recreation with a 0.5, 1 and 1.5 and some sequential years, but I guess I don't understand how looking below also Parks and Rec accounted for 4, if I'm reading this correct, 4 FTE in 18-19, and at that time it was just park staff, correct?
Correct.
And then again 4 in 19-20, and then again 4 in 2021. Those are all just park staff because recreation was separate. And now for 21-22, I only see an increase of 0.5. So that would lead me to believe that we only have 0.5 recreation. That doesn't sound right.
It does not. We're just getting very efficient with our people and our time. So real question for you, or real answer for you. The 4 that you see in the previous years is the park staff that was there. So we had 4 employees that have always kind of been in parks. They've always been allocated to parks. In previous years, and this kind of goes back to the numbers that you're seeing under personnel services. In the past, parks has been compensated from water, sewer, streets, and storm. A portion of their salary and benefits has been paid by water, sewer, streets, and storms. When I got here and the current interim director, Sue Nelson, we had discussions from the budget committee as well as city council members that we are not truly portraying what the true cost of the parks department is. Because we are kind of transferring money from water, sewer, streets, and storms. So over the last couple of years, we have changed and updated the allocation model of our salary and benefits to move into where we are now. In this proposed 21-22, you are seeing 100% of what it costs to run parks with our current staff. So in last year, in this adopted year, 2021, the numbers that you see, the $296,000, that is roughly about 75% of what the costs are for parks for parks. So the allocation was changed this upcoming year to be 100%. So that's one piece of the model. Now going back to the staffing though, when we budgeted, when you look at recreation in the past few years, you see a 0.5, a 1, a 1.75, and that was mainly in the first year, the 0.5, that was Shauna's part-time recreation position for that fiscal year. In 19-20, she was increased to full-time, so that's the 1. And then how we got to the 1.75 was all of the part-time rec assistants that we hired for the programming after schools, summer camps, and all that kind of thing. We are dialing it back for this next year on recreation of what we're seeing. For recreation, we are only budgeting Shauna's position at a full-time and 1 part-time position. Now, what's happened in the parks department is you see that 4 FTE. One of those FTEs is actually considered a public works person. So that public works person is being, in the summary model, is being moved back to public works operations. And it's also convoluted as well because there have been a lot of changes in public works operations as far as what positions are actually active, what positions have been eliminated, what kind of summer labor positions that we used to hire every single year that we have not hired. And so there are a lot of variables to that personnel summary. And I hope that kind of answered the question for you.
It kind of did. So now as I look at the budget for 21-22 proposed personnel services expenditures, is that 3 FTE or 4 FTE or somewhere in between?
For specifically parks, it is 3 FTE.
Thank you.
And then for recreation, it is 1.5.
And it's not uncommon that a public works employee from the other side will get on a mower and go mow and maintain the highways. Well,
Correct.
yep.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in with my question. So I have questions regarding the facility maintenance and the proposed budget for that. It seems a little low.
So the $1,000 that you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yep, that is what the Parks Department had put in for the budget for facility maintenance for their little public workshops that they have that's at McCormick Park.
Okay, so that's not for the parks, the
No, that has,
bleachers,
no,
lighting, things like that, gates.
correct. That has nothing
Where's that
to
come
do.
from?
Yeah, the facility maintenance is only for the public works shops that they have at McCormick Park. The money that you're talking about for any kind of bleacher replacements or any work that needs to be done on any of the picnic tables or anything like that,
Yeah.
that comes out of operating supplies. And so you'll see that is $40,000 budgeted. This current year, they had $62,000 budgeted. As of December, I will tell you that they had only spent $17,000. And to me, budgeting $62,000 and only spending 17 means that we're not being good stewards of what money has been allocated to you in your budget. If you have $62,000 budgeted, the city council and community expects that you're going to spend that money and spend it on projects and improvements to the parks. So that's part of the reason why we've brought in an actual parks and recreation manager to better manage some of the projects and improvements that the city has already laid out and has given money to in the past. But looking at the upcoming budgets and what we expect to do as far as improvements like that, that is why you see $40,000 in this upcoming year.
Okay, so you're saying the new parks manager will be in charge of all of those little projects going around to the park, seeing what needs to be done. Okay, just
Correct.
clarifying.
Yep.
Yeah, and we as a budget committee 2 years ago, I do believe, Bill, we did move, I think, 500,000 for improvements to parks.
Yeah, you did that a couple years ago, and a number of that did fund a number of projects. We came back to you as staff with a list of what those projects were going to be completed. We had anticipated a 2-year time plan to get all of those projects done. Unfortunately, the staffing at the time did not meet those expectations. And so some of those projects are still outstanding. Some of those projects are some large ones and some small ones.
Can I
But
see that list? Can I get a copy of that?
yeah, absolutely. It's all highlighted with what green was stuff that's done, red that is stuff that was, all the projects came from the master plan. And then we kind of just went through and said, what can we get done with this money? Some of it was used as matching grant funds for some of the park improvements that we've seen. That would be something like Campbell Park. A good portion of that $500,000 was a matching grant for those improvements, as well as a bunch of other projects. But yeah, I'm happy to send that out to you.
So, and you're saying that if some of those were completed, that there's still money left in that budget?
There is some still money left out of that $500,000. Those funds actually sit in the facility major maintenance fund.
Okay.
Those are seen as capital improvements for anything larger than $10,000.
Okay.
Is there a possibility, Matt, that a couple of those projects can be shelved for some time and not anticipate that they will get done this next year or the year following?
Yeah.
But possibly a 2-year, 3-year kind of thing. And that to me that is more realistic, especially the issue of Godfrey Park and putting our public works and parks crews to work responsible for the updates on that. They just don't have the time. When I saw that, I just go, oh my gosh, how is this ever going to happen? and
Yeah.
it hasn't happened. And so I think that that's a good idea if we get some people together and some maybe community volunteers and that kind of thing. It needs better organization, but I just don't see putting our parks crews together when they're burdened with maintenance and other issues to expect them to build a children's facility at Godfrey Park. I don't get it. So I certainly would like to see some of these things shelved and take a better look at the projects that are outlined.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mohammed, if the park supervisor wanted to come to you with a project and said, I want to hire for this capital improvement of our parks, a couple employees or a company, with that money, they could have done that.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. The role of leadership on my level here, where we support our teams and community through our frontliner, which are the supervisors, where their duty is to bring those to our attention. And from my part is to share with the community, with the leadership and the council, and go through a prioritization of those projects, just like to what Mr. Council President just mentioned, and start looking at which one we tackle first. Do we need the resources? We have the capital money, and we can tackle those projects based on those kind of factors. So
yeah,
yes.
I just want to make it clear that the money's been there. It's just, you know, you need to make a phone call and you need to get your people behind you, you know, and hopefully that'll start to change.
Yeah, I would like to see
all
that.
I can say. I harped on parks the minute I got here too, Jessica. Trust me, from the get-go.
And Mr.
Well, I
Mayor,
don't mean to harp. That's
No,
not
but I
opinion,
actually
but-
did. No, I actually did. No, you're cool compared to what I was.
Well, and I'm all about community, and I think that we could rally some moms together and parents that want to see Godfrey Park updated, and I think we could totally do that. It's within our power.
I totally agree, Jessica, and it just hasn't been done. And I can tell you that the parks group has been. They've had with personnel. They've had some upsetting issues, and I'm not making any excuses for anyone. I'm just saying that they're overburdened to be creative and imaginative and go build the park, because that's what we've asked. Asked them to do. This was scheduled as a staff to build Godfrey Park.
No, it was they could hire a contractor, Doug, with that. It wasn't they had to do the work.
Actually, Mayor, Councilor Morton is correct that originally we were going to hire a company to come in. They designed it, and then it was the interim public works director as well as our public works staff that said, "Oh yeah, we can do that instead." And then it never got scheduled and it never got done.
For the Godfrey Park, but other improvements could have been done through contractors.
Yes.
That's my point. Was 500 set there 2 years ago. If I'm upsetting somebody, I apologize, but the money was there.
Yeah.
It's you're not alone, Mayor.
I just would like to say that I'm super excited for the position that I have, and we've been going through the laundry list to figure out what things that we can do quickly, do well, and then the things that maybe take more communication and community involvement. And I think Councilor Chilton, you're right on the money with the community wanting to be more involved and just creating those programs where we can allow that to happen. And yeah, so I'm super excited about that. This is something that's on my computer list every day that we're working through. So I think you'll be impressed with some of the things that you start seeing as, we get in here and start communicating a little bit more.
Thank you, Shauna.
And I'm sharing my screen right now. This is the spreadsheet. Just want to briefly go over a couple of things. We've outlined, staff outlined each park, and these are every project that is listed in the master plan. And things that in yellow were kind of deemed as, yes, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it in either 1819 or 1920. And the dollar amounts that were used in the master plan for getting these projects done. If it is green, that means that it has already been completed. Orange is usually in progress. Blue are ones that we wanted to keep in the master plan. They were good ideas, but we just didn't want to invest the 500 grand into these particular projects. There were a couple master plan projects that current staff did not think were needed at this time. And so this is kind of a laundry list that we have been working on internally for staff. So I will send that out to the budget committee and city council after this meeting for you to review and give any thoughts and suggestions. And I know, Councilor Chilton, that Shauna and Mohammed have this list. They have been working on it as well with Shauna and Thad. And I would expect that they would incorporate this into their project plans and be reporting back on it to you as a council during their 6-month reports.
Matt, not a question, but just maybe another way to harp on the Parks Department, but just looking really from a budget committee standpoint, you know, if we're looking at general funds, we know that it's up, what did you say, 10, 11% from previous year? Is that correct, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at the proposed expenditures, you know, for parks specifically is almost nothing. It's very, very stagnant. So essentially 0%. And I really think that that reflects on, and well, it's not really about the dollars because we're hearing that there have been some dollars allocated for parks. It does really reflect on where the priorities are of this city, not to see that increase close to the general fund increase. So just kind of another way to look at it, really looking at the numbers, making sure that future investments into parks are at the same rate as we're making investments into other areas of our budget.
Yeah, I agree, Claire. And then also Sand Island was another one that was $30,000 we were spending on having people go over and maintain. So that has been taken away. So we have taken some off the plate of parks too.
I think Mohammed was wanting to chime in.
Thank you, Councilor Chilton. I lost my train of thought by now. Anyway, so I would say since I joined the city about 5 months ago now, one of my strategic plans obviously was to sit down with my staff from parks and listen to what are the challenges, what are the obstacles. Are we short on equipment? Are we short on direction? Are we short on why these projects on the list that Matt just brought haven't been done, for example? And then start really digging into the facts and kind of trying to bridge the gap between the multiple channels we have within the city. For example, the recreation department was separate from the park. In my opinion, I've seen those always together as one unit because there's a lot of collaboration across these two divisions. And part of my strategic plan was to bring them together first thing first, right? And now we're sitting and we're looking at these numbers and those great questions that the leadership team bringing, and we're looking at a strategic approach where we can funnel those projects through a project management approach and start looking at where can we start. And then we have a great commission that also help and assist in this whole process. So we're looking at the whole picture, at least from my perspective, is as this big picture, and I'm trying to put the puzzle together so we can have a unified approach from all aspects of the city and we can achieve a lot. So I think within the short period I've been here, we've had some success. We've invested some equipment that was lacking in the parks, but as we move forward, I can assure you there will be a lot more to brag about for our community. So stay tuned and we will be there.
Thank you, Mohammed. And I just wanted to say that I've been to Campbell a few times for softball recently, and the bathrooms look great. They're fabulous, such an improvement. Lots of feedback from people. So lots of good things are coming, and I just want to continue to see that grow for parks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Matt, one more parks question. I know currently out of, I believe, tourism, there's some additional funds being paid for cleaning of restrooms due to COVID-19. And I think that sunsets sometime, maybe the end of this fiscal year. If, because of COVID, those additional kinds of things need to happen, where would that money come from? Because I'm not seeing it necessarily in here? Where would you anticipate the council pulling money from to make that happen if needed?
If it's still needed, contracting services, they are scheduled to end at the end of June, so the end of this fiscal year, for those additional cleaning services. If they needed to continue for whatever reason, I would take it out of professional services, out of the Parks Department. Any other questions for Parks? Any questions about recreation? All right, I am gonna share my screen here. So Bill, this is when I would kind of hand it back to you because we have to open it up for a public hearing to accept the state shared revenue. For budget committee members that are new, this is something that the city has to do every year to receive the state shared revenue, which is, if you look in the general fund revenue, it is the intergovernmental revenue. So the cigarette tax, alcohol revenue sharing, and the cannabis tax. We have to hold a public hearing that allows any public comment for the use of those specific state shared revenues.
Matt, have you received any written comments at all from the public?
Not at all.
Bill?
Well, the committee, the
think,
hearing is open for comment regarding our state shared revenue.
I think Patrick had a question.
So
Okay,
Bill,
Patrick.
before you did that, I just wanted to check in for sure with the new budget committee members, Mark and Michelle, and just be sure they felt that maybe their questions or comments have been addressed. I know how being new on a committee sometimes. So I just before we proceeded on public hearing, I just wanted to check in with Mark, if we could check with Mark and Michelle just to make sure that they're comfortable moving forward or have any questions or concerns.
Make sure they're not asleep.
Well, they might be asleep too.
Yeah.
Michelle or Mark?
I do have kind of a question. How can we get the police department the funding they need? I know we're kind of working on that, but that to me seems like it should be a priority.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest questions or issues we have, especially dealing with general fund resources, is that we kind of have a finite amount of money. So if we want to increase police by, let's say, $500,000, where do we take that $500,000 from? Because we only have this pool of money, so to speak, unless the city council elects somehow to receive some kind of new revenue that it can earmark for those. This is where we got into the discussion of a $2 recreation fee to see recreation get started. But unless you bring in additional resources, new revenue, you would have to pull that money from another department. So the question comes, if you're going to take $1 from, if you want to give $1 to police, where do you want to take $1 away from?
Mark still asks poses a very good question, and we are concerned about public safety, and I think personally I really appreciate Mark asking that question.
Mark, did I kind of answer your the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just going to be a longer process than what the study sounds great, all that, so we can earmark funds for that. I just want to make sure it happens in a different way.
Government definitely moves slow.
Yeah.
Our system was deliberately designed so that government would move slow.
Yeah.
Matt,
are we ready to open the public hearing?
I think Councilor Topaz had a question.
One other question, and this goes to, say, change in funding mechanisms or whatever. Is there any movement at the state level to change this 3% cap that they put on us right now, we can't change our taxes just because of the way the state tax system jumped on top of us.
We voted it in.
To change that?
Are you referring to the 3% cap on marijuana?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is current legislation right now that I know John and Rachel are following, because the state has kind of threatening to take more of the revenue sharing portion, but then allow cities to administratively increase their 3% to 10%. So giving us another option to do another 7% on top of that. I have not heard an update from Rachel on where that stands as in the legislature, but that is a possibility. As far as property taxes, I wouldn't hold your breath on changing the property tax system in Oregon anytime soon. John, did you want to?
Which is a big problem. I mean, we got stuck with at a different time in a different financial world.
So if the state takes 2% of our tax in our area and we raise it from 3% to 10%, they still get 2% of that 10%.
Not exactly. So we get the 3% and then we get a portion of the state's percentage that they get on top of that. So, you know, if we get $100 or if we get $103 and that includes our 3%. So we still get that. But then amongst all of our cities, we share that $100. And so Portland gets a portion, we get a portion. It's just kind of general revenue sharing based on populations. And the state takes a portion of that. They take 50%, let's say. Well, now the state wants to take 75 or 80% of that revenue sharing, giving the cities less money. So that's why they are looking at potentially ways to have cities be able to increase their 3% so that they can gain more money back. I think that's kind of a very simplistic example, John. John is foaming at the mouth.
No, you're pretty close there. It's a complex system. The state cannabis tax is 17%. The legislature, when they set that up, gave the option to the cities to put a ballot measure on to increase it by 3%. We did that. It passed broadly. Big majority, and now there's always been an attack by the legislature on those local revenue sharing dollars, and it's the league and the state go back and forth, and they're sparring about that all the time. And this is just one more run at it and attempt to do that. So I think Matt's summary was pretty spot on. The police attracting and retaining police is difficult across the state, across the nation. Places like Portland are down, hundreds of officers, and what, how we can compete in the market it's more than money. It's the quality of life. It's the, what St. Helens has to offer as a small community, some incentives perhaps, and just people to buy into that. And we found really good success with officers that end up living in the town, live in the city, or more likely to stay longer term, especially after their kids get into school and things. And it's something we have our eye on. It's a really complex issue, and it's not unique to St. Helens at all.
So with that, Bill, I will let you to continue on because I don't see anybody raising their hands or.
Okay. Do we have any other comments regarding state shared revenue?
I'd like to make a motion to receive state shared revenues for general fund use in fiscal year 2021-22.
Rick Scholl has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have been moved and seconded that we receive state revenue, shared revenue. Are there any further discussion?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure we knew what are the sources of the state shared revenue.
Those revenue items are $10,000 in cigarette tax, $255,000 in alcohol beverage taxes, $135,000 in general revenue sharing, and $140,000 in cannabis tax revenue sharing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed, you show this by the same sign. As far as I can see, it's unanimous. Okay, which brings us to the next item, which is I think the most enjoyable item on this entire meeting,
Not
which is the
mine.
approval of our property tax rate. And Matthew, what is the maximum rate that we have?
The maximum property tax rate is the same as last year, is the same as it has been for many
Year
years.
before,
$1.9078 per $1,000. And just for those that are new, we cannot increase the permanent property tax rate. You can always elect to decrease the rate. However, the budget is derived from using this $1.9.
that's 1.987, correct?
9078.
907.
Yep.
1.907. That's per $1,000 of assessed valuation. Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a motion to approve our property tax rate of 1.907 per $1,000?
Just for reference, Bill, it is 9078.
Yes.
Oh, why? Oh, excuse me, 1.9078. Excuse me.
I will make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021-22, a property tax rate of $1.90.78 per thousand of assessed value of general fund property taxes for tax levied by the city of St. Helens permanent rate.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by raising their hand or saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. I believe it was unanimous. Okay, we now approve next, which comes back to committee questions. Do we have any committee questions? There are no questions from the committee. Okay, that brings us to our last item, which is approval of the proposed city budget. Do we have a motion to approve our city budget?
Sorry, I had a very loud motorcycle going by, but I'll make a motion to approve expenditures for fiscal year 2021-22 in the amount of $48,010,200 and to establish the maximum expenditures for each fund as shown in fiscal year 2021-2022. Proposed budget expenditures summary by fund.
Well stated, Mayor.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilor Topaz. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify, do we have discussion?
I have a question, yes. Were we going to wait until the chief got back to Matt regarding
Approving the city budget?
The performance measures that are not listed on the budget do not impact the numbers on the budget. So you can go ahead and approve the budget and I will insert those performance measurements.
not the measures, Matt, not the performance measures, the request to do the research.
Yeah, I don't think that study's gonna cost so much that we can't pull that out of there somewhere to have that done.
Yeah, those funds could be taken out of contingency funds to pay for that study outside of the police department budget. And that would be up to a city council decision at a later point.
Because I definitely agree with getting that done. So
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the budget. Do we have any further discussion?
I just want to give kudos to Matt and thank him for his very explaining it very simple, keeping it simple, and good job on the budget.
Thank you.
Well, if we're ready for the question, those in favor, signify by raising their hand or saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Budget has been approved.
Thank you all very much. Please stay seated, and we will transition into an urban renewal meeting once Bill closes the official budget committee meeting.
Okay, do we have a motion that the budget committee be closed?
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Allow me 1 second.